Morning. Good morning. Happy Advent. We're still slightly in Advent and Merry Christmas. Tomorrow is Christmas Eve, the Christ Mass, the welcoming of the Christ child. We are finally here. Some of you may be rushing out to do some last minute shopping or preparations or buying of food or baking or cooking or whatever you're maybe doing. My invitation to all of us in the midst of the preparations that are maybe at a fevered pitch is to take a moment and reflect on what this actually means. What is it we're doing? Why are we giving gifts? What is it we're hoping to express or to do in this time of year? What is this all about? I'm reminded of years ago, and maybe it's years ago, I don't know if this still happens, but when people would say Xmas, people would say, put the Christ back in Christmas, not knowing that X in the Greek alphabet is uh, what Christ would be an X. And so even in seminary, when I was going to say uh, Christ or Christians, I would put an X. And so Xmas is Christ and Christmas. And so there's, much hullabaloo about that. Or how you celebrate Christmas. Oh, you should do this or you should do that. Or people aren't talking about Jesus enough. And I find it interesting because each year I do think that our season of Advent is a real gift to us to make sure that what we're thinking about in the season is actually Jesus and incarnation. And part of Advent also is recognizing the Alpha and Omega of God, the end of all things as well, the eschatology or the end things. And so in this season, there's much to do and prepare spiritually, as even physically or societally. And so in this time, here we are, the day before Christmas Eve, and we have this space together, this space to sort of push back the noise and all of the things you're supposed to do and to focus instead on what does this mean to you? What does Christmas mean to you? I'm also reminded of when I first became a priest, and I would open up that altar book to go through the service, and I would look for the preface for Christmas, and I'd be looking until I would realize, oh, it's the preface for incarnation. And so that word incarnation is what I really want to talk about today. What does incarnation mean? What does it mean, God with us, Emmanuel, coming to us? All of these things that we say, but may not take a moment to actually think about or be close to. Good morning, Barbara. And hey, Marty, so glad that we're together on this day. And yes, happy Tuesday to you as well. And so, incarnation, embodiment, God with us, God has come to us embodied, incarnation. And we are invited to incarnate God, to embody the life of Jesus, the teachings of Jesus, our faith, and how we are, not just in what we do, but how we be, as it were. And so, in our being, when we think about God incarnate, God with us, my hope is that we'll feel a sense of calmness over us, that we'll feel some peace, that it's not about all the doing, it's about the being. And so, in the gift giving, to be present to another person, in the preparations for the meals, and the offering of the gifts of our lives, that this is about a sacredness of action, not just a busyness or ticking a box. And it's easy for it to devolve into busyness and ticking a box. Now it is 7:30 in the morning, so I'm going to take a sip, have an appropriate cup. So, good morning, Barbara. Um, yes, it isn't just a day, it's a Christmas life. Good morning, Caroline. So good to see all of you and be with you. And yes, it's a really is a state of being. Um, uh, Christmas being about our being and about how we live, our incarnation, embodiment of God. Incarnation is a really powerful thing to think about. Um, so, if you were God, and I say this, I think every Christmas also, if you were God, how would you come to humans? How would you communicate that humans are loved? I think we might, be tempted to do some sort of, writing in the sky, or, you know, chariots or trumpets, or we would do something, I think, differently, because we think so much about things from an adult perspective of power. But God comes to us as an infant, as a baby, and not just as a baby, but the story of Mary and Joseph, when we hear it tomorrow night or Christmas morning, to remember and to allow ourselves to be present to the fact that there's a lot of anxiety and fear and uncertainty and danger in this story. There's a lot of vulnerability and disestablishment. There's not a room for them at the end. They're traveling on the road, and traveling is a dangerous thing to do in that period, sometimes now, but then especially to be on the road with, to be vulnerable and not with your clan, as it were, to be and so this piece of there not being room, when we sit with that a minute and think, what, when you are in a place and there is not room for you, how does it feel to you? And how do you feel when there's no room for you, and where where you're staying and what you're doing is unstable and you're not sure? And so that feeling of instability is very much part of this telling of this story, but we often overlook it. We're so used to saying, and there was no room for them at the end, and with the Christmas thing we go on. But to sit with that a minute and think, for you in your own life, is there room for you in your own life? Or is your own life so packed with other things, there's no room for you? And to think about Jesus coming to us and God coming to us. Is there room for Jesus in our Christmas? Is there room for God in our Christmas? Is there room for God in our life? We're so busy, and God kind of gets Sunday morning for this period of time, but then the rest of the week, got things to do. And so this is a wonderful time of year to stop and think about incarnation being not just a moment or not just an action, but a being mode, to incarnate God to each moment of our day when we feel ourselves starting to get, you know, co opted into all of the things, to take a moment and think, God is with me here, to be attentive to that and to offer that to other people. Um, so, Jane, good morning. I'm glad you're here with us. If there's what's on your heart when you think about Christmas and you think about all of the action and all of the busyness, what would help you center in on your being more? What would help you with this understanding of really making room not only for God, but for you in this Christmas? That this is about your Christmas too, and your own being. I was at a store yesterday buying groceries. Some of you could probably pick it out of the crowd. And it was just a lot of people. There were people, there were carts, people were, and these were not happy people. These were not people who were caroling. These were people who were, there was a lot of anxiety in the room, let me just say. And I took the moment to really discipline myself and think about what's happening here. And so I started making myself look at people and say, oh, excuse me, here, let me move that out of your way. I started, I decided I was going to change the narrative around me, that I was going to have a different energy than frenetic, things. And I started really praying, and I was praying for the people around me. And it was really interesting, the change in me, because then I became very calm. I wasn't, you know, I wasn't feeling jostled or anything. And then the person checking us out took a very long time and was very detailed about it. And I just kind of let it be fine. I thought, this isn't a race. We're not, it's not like trying to rush. Let's just be. And I have to say, it really changed my experience of it. I found it to be more joyful. I enjoyed the experience more. And with the woman who was checking us out, we actually had a nice moment where, and I was able to say, happy holidays to her, Merry Christmas. And it really helped me change the narrative for myself, and then I hope for other people. I hope that I had a different energy, but it was amazing how powerful that was for me to just, instead of getting caught up in it and think, oh, we got to rush, 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 to stop. So I invite you to that thoughtfulness today. Um, and good morning, Christine, and hi, Owen. So glad that you're here. One of my favorite people, Owen. Not that I have favorites, but if I did, Owen, you might be on the list. But anyway, so for your Christmas and this time in your life, how are you creating space for yourself? And then I want to make sure I mention, because this is so easy for us to overlook, along with peacefulness. And, we talk about peace on earth, to embody that, to incarnate that, but also in this time to recognize grief. While there is joy and while there is happiness, and while God is coming to us, part of Advent and Christmas is always, always, always going to involve grief. It's going to involve sitting with our grief. It's going to involve acknowledging our grief. If nothing else, our grief that we don't always think about God with us, that we don't really focus on that as much throughout the rest of the year. And then the grief of those we love but see no longer. That marking of time means that this year around the table there may be fewer chairs, or this year around the table there may be dreams that we had held in 2024 that now at the end of 2025 we're finding were unrealized, or are actually turned into something that was unwanted. And so there's grief in these markings of time, in how we are, and to allow that to be true, to not feel like we have to happy that away, to quickly put on a happy face and not talk about grief, but rather to allow some space, from sacred space, to acknowledge that um, grief is what happens when there's been love in our lives, is we grieve, and the sacredness of that. Jesus grieves for his friend Lazarus. Around the crucifixion, there's grief. And in the birth of Jesus, Mary pondering in her heart the grief of wanting the trip to have gone differently, Joseph and Mary thinking that this is going to go a different way, and then it doesn't. There is grief around us. And grief is not something we want to push away from us. We want to honor the sacred journey of it. And that's hard because we don't often, when we grieve, we're like, oh, hurry up and get over it, hurry up and get over it. I should get over it. No, we should honor it. We should be with it. What does it feel like in this moment to be grieving the loss of these people and some of these places? What does it feel like for you to be welcoming Jesus to a moment that may feel grievous, that may have grief in it? And to know that Jesus is really with you is so essential. And that God is not immune to it and expecting you to get over it, but that grief is a sacred part of any Christmas. It is a sacred part of being a human who has loved people and been loved. And you're so welcome, Marty. I think each year it's so essential. And we sometimes will say, oh, well, we had a blue Christmas last week, which is a way, for those of you who may not know, of acknowledging this by being blue, being the sadness in this. But I just want to bring that into more than just a service, that is part of this. And if you find yourself to be attentive, sometimes when we're short tempered and upset with people, it may have more to do with a grief that we're feeling than with the situation, even annoying as it may be. So today is the day. Tomorrow will be Christmas Eve and then Christmas, and we'll go into that season. But today is an opportunity to take a moment to think about incarnation, the embodiment of God, to take a moment and think about what is embodied in your life, and to be attentive to how you might want to change your life, how you might want to be and make space for Jesus in a new way. And I want to acknowledge that next week I will not be live, and I'll be taking a week or so off. I am going to the Holy Land on January 1st. I'll be going. The Archbishop of Jerusalem has invited a group of bishops to come and to be in the Holy Land with him and with some other religious leaders from around the world. So I'm honored to get to go. To on that trip, and so I will be away for about two. I think it's 2 Tuesdays for that trip. But then we will be back together to start 2026 to begin a new year. And so in this season of Advent today, in this season of Christmas, that is begins with the birth of a child, may we all make room for Jesus in our lives and for our own souls. May we embody Jesus for ourselves and others by sharing love and peace and comfort and joy. And as we begin to look at the end of this year, the beginning of the next, to be attentive to how we seek to live, to embody Jesus each day. So, blessings, blessings, blessings. Merry Christmas. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Take good care. God bless you.